Forms are the way users interact with data, and I think you agree with me that without data, forms are kind of useless. So let's create some pieces of data for this section. Somewhere under the core folder, I create a new TypeScript file called user.info, and this file will export some interface that describes the user information. Namely, we have to define all the fields that are available in our form. So I will add the first name field, which has a type string, same for the last name, and so on and so forth. Now we would need to create an object that implements this interface. So I will go to my component file and make a new property with the type user.info. TypeScript definitely complains because required properties are missing, so let's implement them. Cool. Now we would need to somehow bind this form model with the actual form in the component template. In template-driven forms, the binding happens by using the ngModel directive. We will learn more about this directive later, but for now, just treat this directive as a bridge between our form model and the native control, which is like input in our case. However, it is still not enough information for Angular on how to bind an appropriate form control with the corresponding field in the form data object. So we have to define it somehow explicitly, but how? If we look up the source code of ngModel, you can see that there exists an input called ngModel as well, and it does track a value that is bound to this directive. Exactly what we need actually. So, according to that, we can use the ngModel property to provide the value that needs to be bound to this particular control. In such a way, we have connected the form control with the corresponding field in the form data model. This notation also can be shortened because when the directive property and selector have the same name, then you can leave only data binding and the result will be the same, because such a way you declare the Angular directive on some HTML tag and at the same time you provide the value for the directive property. However, it would be still not enough to make it work, because if we open the browser console, you can see a runtime error, and namely it says that we use ngModel within a form tag. So that's why we should also provide a name attribute, or we should define this control as a standalone. About standalone controls we will talk later in this course. So let's fix it by adding the name attribute to our control. So I go back to the template and add the name attribute with the value first name. Cool. Now the form group that is created for the form tag can properly work and track this control because it has a unique key. And also you can notice that error inside the browser console has disappeared. Now let's get back and make sure that our binding is actually working. So I will change the value in the form model to some string, and we can see that the value was synchronized with our form control, which is cool. But the data can be changed also by the user, so another way around. And currently we have a problem with that. Let me quickly demonstrate it. Somewhere here above I will create a paragraph, and here below I will print my form model data, and I apply the JSON pipe for some nice formatting, and this is how it looks now in the browser. You may notice that when I change my first name, this change isn't reflected in the form model, though it should be. It happens because currently we have one-way data binding and our data flows from the form model to the view, and our input is a part of this view. That's why our changes in the input that basically happens on the view side, they're not synchronized because we don't currently have any mechanism which would implement two-way data binding and synchronize the value from the view to the model. To make the two-way data binding work for the ng model, you should use a construction called banana in the box. And in such a way, the data will be synchronized from the data model to the view and vice versa. Now you can see when I type in the first name field, the changes are also propagated to the form model. I will not be explaining in detail two-way data binding in Angular and just mention that it is not something ng model specific. And if you would like to know more about it, you can have a look at the video edition number 2 for this course. But yeah, let's continue, and obviously we should bind the rest of the properties with corresponding controls. Likewise, we did it for the first name. So I will copy this part and apply it also for the last name, of course with some small adjustments. And in order to save your time, I will pause the video and get back when I update all controls. So, welcome back. I just updated all my controls and now we can go to the browser and see that everything works fine. You can see I'm changing the field last name and the value is being synchronized perfectly with the form model. The same works also for the nickname. Email control works as well. So everything works just as we expected. Now it is time to recap what we have learned so far. To bind the form data with the HTML form using template-driven forms, you have to use the ng model directive that works like a bridge between the native form control and your form data. It helps to track and synchronize value changes and react to the control's state. To achieve a two-way data binding for the control and associated data, you have to use the banana in the box syntax. And also, do not forget to add attribute name to your controls, because it is required for the proper work of the ng form directive.